And welcome to another episode of Binge Society, the podcast where nothing is in moderation. And as always, my name is Winston Brewington.
I am Danny Bronner.
And I'm Yemi Afolabi.
And we have a big show for you today. We are recording this early in the morning. We got up. This is 10:30 in the morning. I don't even know what's happening right now. But today, we have our favorite, most fantastic person in the whole universe. Really, I think in all the multiverse. I'm gonna go ahead and say the most bestest, fantasticest person in the whole multiverse is fantastic. Frankey, welcome back to the show.
Yeah. If you guys are wondering
distance.
why there are zombies here, it's because I said 10:30.
Yes.
I said wake up.
In fact, she was like, yesterday we were talking about doing the show. She was like, "Can we do it even earlier?" I was like, I'm not sure such a time exists.
Saturday.
And her
He's
counter
lying.
was
He said earlier than 10:30? Question mark, exclamation point.
embarrassed emoji face. She was like, "Yeah, ain't you a teacher?" I was like, "Yeah, but it's break right now, so I am." And you'd be very proud of me. I'm up late.
Back to his natural self.
Yeah, revert back, man. But you'd be very proud of me. Why I'm staying up late, Frankie, is because I'm binging out on anime. I just finished Attack on Titan. I got caught back up with Attack on Titan, and
Nice.
I've been binging for the first time Dragon Ball Super. So I'm getting back into the
For whatever reason, he
screaming,
won't binge.
lots of powering up.
Slayer. I don't.
He won't. Demon Slayer? Yo,
It's in the
go
queue.
ahead
It's in the
and top
queue.
that off this one season. Yeah, but the animation
and it's
is
so
fire.
good. It's so good. Well, I think it's so good. I'll speak.
I
from
think
this
I think it's definitely worth the watch. I don't think it's like terrible. I think definitely the worst.
Well,
You know,
not
watch
so
it.
worth it as you suggest, Yemi.
No, I thought it was probably one of the most like beautiful animes that I've seen animated in a long time. I thought the character development was like very kind of cliche anime kind of. I'm a good, reliable coon, and it's just I like to see that type of story. And yeah, I think there's really you just watch it, man. I don't want to spoil it or anyone who's listening.
When you say kun, it's like the ending. It's a suffix that you use for a male kid. You just made it sound like he was a reliable coon. Let's just work on the phrasing there a little bit there.
Listen,
For people who are uninitiated.
I'm not using a racial slur for an anime. That's
I'm a
not what I'm
reliable
doing.
coon.
He's a reliable
Fucking
coon,
Clarence
like,
Thomas.
Not a coon. You got listen. All right, it's early, man. It's
Yeah.
10:40.
I'm enjoying my coffee. So we're joking a little bit now, but we are going to be getting into some serious material. Like I said, this is a big episode. Our binge of the week this week is HBO's documentary On the Record, which focuses on the victims and their allegations against Russell Simmons with regard to sexual harassment and rape, just to put it out there as simply and as plainly as that. So this is very, very serious and sensitive subject matter. So we are really taking this seriously, and we're going to get deep into this because I think it's really important that we do talk about this. But before we do that, let's check in and see how Frankie's been doing, because I think it was just before quarantine started. We were innocent little children talking about a movie about a Harley Quinn and birds of prey.
That's right.
Times were so simple then, and then society completely collapsed. How have you been during this quarantine? How have you been making lemonade in your world of Instagram and everything that you do? And also, what have you been doing in the wake of the George Floyd protests and the Black Lives Matter protests?
Yeah, it's crazy. Anytime someone's like, how you're doing, I feel like my response is always like, as good as you can be during this time. Because I live in Brooklyn and, I live in a studio and stuff like that. So that definitely takes its time, its toll on you. But yeah, in some aspects, especially with my content creation and things like that, I've been able to thrive with all this extra time, not having to commute and things like that. So definitely in the wake of, I've been calling it like a new revolution that we're all kind of being engaged in. I've been able to really hone in on what my interests are in regards of comic books and anime, and just kind of correlate it to the social issues that we have today. So I've been focusing more on comic books because they're American, but I'm definitely gonna move into anime again. But just like how they tie into what we see today. So like being a model minority, comparing Inhumans versus mutants, or like comparing Candace Owens to like Beast, Hank McCoy, things of that, or talking about Batman and his police brutality. So it's actually been really well received, which I think is dope that I could just kind of gripe about like how difficult and nuanced it is to be a black, especially a black woman, watching these things, knowing that they're not for me, but still enjoying them, and being able to finally call out like what is difficult for me to process. Like, yeah, this is meant for white boys, but like I still like it, and I want to see these changes, and it's pretty dope.
Yeah, just
Yeah.
because you have a comic book that
Awesome
maybe isn't
sauce.
made for you per se, it doesn't mean you can't apply your filter onto that and project your thoughts. So that's really cool as you're doing that. Can I just back up the truck a little bit? Candace Owens is Hank McCoy Beast. Can you just briefly
Yeah.
break
It's pretty
that
brilliant,
down
actually. But
for me?
you gotta listen to that. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's really dope. So just about like he's been a lobbyist for a while and hasn't really had any mutant reform. Especially when he changes into the beast and he's permanently blue. You see a lot of self-hate there. And it just serves as a confirmation bias to his human peers. I was gonna say white, but it's not about being white, it's about being human in this universe. And just like how he just kind of, there's a lot of times that he sets back the mutant community because of his own self-hate and his own biases, and I think that that's interesting. And that's a lot of things. I think I'm gonna hit the X-Men at least 5 times, and I think it's easy. It's low-hanging fruit because it's supposed to be an allegory to Black people. So even
Yeah.
Charles Xavier, who's supposed to be like this Martin Luther King figure and supposed to be always right, you look at him and he's very flawed. He has just weird thing of being where you start to relate to Magneto even more because he's more clear cut. Yeah, he kills people, okay, but sometimes that's necessry.
Magneto's any means necessary.
By any means necessary. Wow.
Power of magnetism.
I did a video about that
Your
too, where I'm
race,
like,
boy.
y'all would cancel Magneto immediately.
Oh,
Y'all
he'd
talking about,
yeah. He would
yeah,
definitely have
people
the eye
be
in his
like,
phone
yeah,
tap, but
I'd be down with
just-
Magneto, forget Xavier. I'm like, come on, y'all. Y'all not really down with Magneto. Y'all cancel him immediately just for like his actions and the way he speaks. So yeah. He'd be Nick Cannon in this situation, to be honest.
Nick Cannon got canceled
Hey,
real quick. Y'all
You
saw
got your
that?
next video.
He got
Yeah.
canceled.
I should.
He got canceled. He's
Oh,
like,
Nick
I'm
Cannon?
not gonna apologize. He's like, I'm sorry.
He's like, all right, we're gonna put you.
Within the same day, like, I'm sorry, everybody.
It's in the same sentence.
I'm gonna listen now.
I'm gonna listen now. I'm gonna be a good boy.
Yeah.
Apology party.
Cannon.
Yeah.
No more
I don't
no more bad improv.
Yeah. So
What are you talking about? Wild 'N Out is that is a gem, an improv gem.
Avant-garde improv, man. Oh my gosh, the choices they make. Jesus Christ.
all right. So you guys ready to get in to
Man, this
business?
is why we're
Yes.
here.
All right. Here we go. Our binge of the week this week, as Danny said earlier, is On the Record. The new documentary, is on HBO Max currently. It was directed by Kirby Dick and Amy Ziering, and it follows around mainly Drew Dixon, as well as other accusers of basically Russell Simmons, the Def Jam co-founder, had several rape allegations against him of basically over 20 women. So yeah, this is a pretty heavy documentary, and we are just gonna try to do the best that we can to unpack it and have this discussion. And let's get the ball rolling here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So with regard to us having this discussion, something that's kind of making us uncomfortable, me, Yemi, Winston, the Binge Society, is as I saw this documentary and I felt like we have to talk about this. It deals a lot with Black issues. That's something that we have certainly been leaning into over the course of the last, I don't know, month or so in our episodes. But then we were thinking, like, is it okay for 3 dudes to have this conversation? Even if we have someone like Fantastic Frankey to join us and really give that female perspective. And thank you so much for doing that and being vulnerable enough to talk about these issues with 3 dudes, Frankey. But I just wanted to ask you, so is it okay for a couple of dudes, or say just like a one dude podcast, whatever the case may be, whether it's just a conversation, is it okay for dudes to be talking about this in obviously in a thoughtful and receptive way? Obviously not talking about, we're not dismissive. I'm going to just like come out and say we're not dismissive of these allegations and these victims, but is it okay for us to have these conversations and to wrestle with the implications?
Yeah. I think an important part of that is having a woman there to kind of facilitate and to check you, to make sure that, as you said, you're being open and understanding, and it's a dialogue where we're exchanging information and processing it. So I definitely think that. And number two, it's a hard truth, but we need men to also talk about it in the way that, like, for the Black Lives Matter movement, we need white people to talk about it for there to be real change. So if men aren't discussing it, then it's a bunch of women, perceived by the masses, it's women complaining. And then that's where, as in the documentary where we can get in, it begins to implode. So we need both sides to really push that forward. I remember one thing that was so powerful about the R. Kelly thing, not just the terrible stories that were being told, but also we saw his mans in them speaking on it. And that kind of gave that validity that, honestly, it's terrible that society needs that, but it gave a validity that wasn't there with some other allegations, because now it's not a bunch of women trying to get money, which is what they're pushing. It's now men confirming and reaffirming. So I think it's terrible, but I think it's necessary that we actually need men to discuss and go over it, to honestly kind of push that point forward.
Okay, that's really good to know. Good to know. So I guess I feel a bit more comfortable having this conversation. Is there maybe like a certain degree of burden that you feel like you might feel like having to be that? You don't have to be here. Obviously, you volunteered. You can hang up anytime. You can hang up right now if you want.
I did not volunteer, you guys. Danny sent me
We
that
asked
one
her to be on
emoji.
because I felt uncomfortable. Like, dude, I don't want to talk about this. I felt uncomfortable. I'll speak for me. I felt uncomfortable because I felt like me talking about women's assault is like a white person telling me about the black experience. Like, I have no frame of reference, and I know for a fact I'm part of the problem because I've worked in the entertainment industry. You know, even if it's by proxy, I've seen it, maybe like had problematic behavior in the past as a young, dumb, full of cum type of guy, but I felt like uncomfortable. Like, I don't want, like, if I was a woman who's gone through something traumatic, I wouldn't want to listen to 3 dudes talk about that. That's just coming from the eye, just like me personally, which is why it's so good to have your perspective on, because it's like I do want to learn and understand more of the nuance, because the more I talk to my female friends and like entertainer friends, it's a completely different experience than me going to a show than them going to a show performing at the same show, which to me like blows up my mind. But then again, it's like a black person's experience in the same country is eons different than a white person's experience. Like totally 2 different worlds.
Yeah, but you know what, Yemi? I think it's important that you use your platform to process that. You know what I mean? Because your private conversations with your colleagues, to be honest, is, I don't want to say burdensome, but it's them helping you and then you're learning. But in this aspect, we're all learning together and processing together, and you get to share that with your fans. And it's like uncomfortable conversations that we actually need to have. And, I'm glad you guys are correlating it to the Black Lives Matter movement, because whenever I speak, particularly the Black men, that's the only correlation I can give to them. So microaggressions, things like that, I'm like, the only time you feel this way is when you're interacting with white people, and you need to move accordingly. So in the way that, like, Yemi, if 3 white guys were like, hey, we're trying to figure out this racial things, would you speak to me about it? It's like, Yeah, like I want to help you understand that and then help you have your fans understand that as well. So it's like good work. As long as now if it was the three of y'all talking alone, I'd be like, I'd be in y'all DMs quick.
Yeah,
Like, yo,
exactly, exactly.
that's
You know,
crazy.
what to say about sexual assault? It's like, really, like you, like I'm not expert one and two. Like I know like in my empirical knowledge that I have no frame of reference. Do you know what I mean?
Exactly.
So it's just
Yeah.
like I need like that's why I was like, well, we got to be careful with this because we don't want to mansplain, or at least
Right.
I don't want to mansplain to any of our female or who identify as female gender like listeners. Like this is you ladies need to just cut it out. You know, guys. You know, like come on.
Well, I
kitchen
don't think
time,
we'd be
you know,
saying
like,
those things.
No, I'm saying I don't.
Get off my lawn.
Cut out these allegations. No. No,
That's
we're not
not
just talking
what
about
I'm
this because
saying.
Frankie is
That's
here.
completely the opposite of what I'm trying to say. Is like that's
Yeah,
what
we
I
would
wanted.
we would have reasonable and reflective conversations, and we are reasonable and honest people. But even so, it's not appropriate like to put out our thoughts without someone like you here, Frankie.
Yeah.
So thanks again.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Thank you again for being here. Fantastic Frankie. So yeah, I guess let's get started on just like our overall thoughts of the documentary in general. We'll go to Frankie first because she is our special guest. What did you think of the documentary?
Yo, I thought it was very powerful. And HBO's been doing this. I don't know if you guys have had a chance to see I May Destroy You, but it's that same type of like believing the victims, painting the picture. One thing I loved about this documentary, which I don't see often, is that it focuses on Dixon and her career first. So there's a good 20 minutes where they talk about who she is as a person, her background, things like that, to say that she is more than this sexual assault. And I think that takes out that piece of it being a bunch of victims. So instead of it being a bunch of victims talking about something tragic in their life, it's a bunch of women, people, right? Where we see these are members of societies, okay? And their contribution to society, and then how these particular men impacted them and how negatively it was. And I just thought that was dope because every time I see it, and I think that what deters a lot of women from speaking out is that you don't want to lose your sense of self, who you are. You don't want to be considered now a victim and have that pity because you're like, I've done so much, I've worked so hard, and in an instant now I'm associated only with this. So I just thought it was really dope in that aspect.
Yeah, I mean, she obviously had such an amazing career and was tremendously influential and had other opportunities to be all the more so influential, only to have those denied by L.A. Reid. The likes of John Legend and Kanye West were
Crazy.
passed on simply out of pettiness, simply because he did not get the quid pro the quo, basically.
And
So-
I don't know if you guys remember Pink.
Oh, yeah,
of course.
absolutely.
Yeah, remember Pink came out hip hop?
Yeah,
do remember that.
yes.
And she was just
She did?
talking about
There
most
you
girls.
go.
There you go,
Man,
looking pitiful. Yeah, I remember that. Yes.
And then she
Danny was a
also
Pink
in
fan.
her videos were like a bunch of Vin Diesels, right? Racially ambiguous, brolic, bold men dancing around. It was just very ambiguous, and she moved that way. And then when she finally went to her rock, which was more her speed and what she wanted to do, she has a line in I'm a hazard to myself. She goes, LA told me you'll be a pop star. All you have to do is change everything you are. And she speaks on that, and I think behind the music and stuff on like how toxic he was and how he was like, you need to be someone like Christina Aguilera and shit like that. And she was like not for it. And then that's why he was like, well, then you have to do hip hop. You're not doing what you want to do and stuff like that. And she talks about how abusive and things. So then when I saw how petty he was to Drew Dixon, who at that point had shaped music in general,
Pretty
the stuff
much,
that she
yeah.
was saying had shaped. Lauryn Hill was the last Black woman to win Album of the Year at the Grammys. Beyonce has not yet. You know what I'm saying? So
Holy shit, that's like what, 99 or 2000?
1999, exactly.
Yeah.
So this woman is responsible for things like that, for Method Man, for putting Bone Thugs in Harmony, and then could have also been responsible for Kanye West and John Legend, which is crazy to me because I'm like, imagine how different Kanye would have been. The
On Def Jam,
trajectory
right?
if he got signed initially. It wasn't Jeff Jan, it was LA Records she
Oh.
was at by this time.
Yeah.
But like just his trajectory would have been totally different if he had started there and he wasn't and I don't know if it would have made his music better or worse. But just think about that impact and what it is just because she's bad and just that burden that comes with being bad in any industry and the difficulties that comes with that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
maybe he wouldn't have gone insane, and maybe he would have registered to vote. Maybe he actually would have been capable of running for president. Who knows? But
I don't know
I
if that
think-
would
I
have
don't
changed.
know
yeah,
about
probably
that,
not.
man.
Probably
Yeah.
not. Probably not.
Probably would have had more hits. You know,
Maybe.
she created
Maybe.
the soundscape. She just. I didn't realize how much like Def Jam created the soundscape of the night. Like all those songs, I was listening to it on the way here. I was just like, these songs, like what? Yeah, these are all like hit like
Bangers. man.
songs, like all of them. Like not.
Yeah, Def Jam was a force, bro.
Yeah.
And you know, just like in the 90s specifically, it was such a force in hip hop. And, you know, all these allegations and things are so, I mean, it's just so disappointing, man, because I've heard L.A. Reid speak in person, and, you know, I have his book, and I also have Russell Simmons's book as well. And it's just like, it's just so like, man, well, I mean, we'll get more into it as we go along, but it's just, you know, meeting your heroes or so-called heroes is not always the look. As we
Don't
will-
meet your heroes, man. Trust
don't
me.
meet your heroes, as
Yeah,
they say.
'cause
They're,
apparently
they're
a
gonna
lot of
let
our
you down
heroes
one
suck.
way or another, man. I've learned that as a comedian, meeting heroes of mine, and I'm like, that's so and so, and that's this person. And me and Danny, we have these conversations like, this guy, racist piece of shit, and like you see him, you're like, but they seem cool on TV. That's like maybe 4% of what you're seeing is them. Everything
Right.
else is
Yeah.
what you're seeing is a curated package, but like off screen or like in a green room, or if you're someone who's of lower status, and I'm saying status like as far as a comedian, not a person or like worth of value, like the way they treat you indicates who they really are. And oh my gosh, I've been in so many situations, men and women alike, but specifically like white Caucasian males, like I'm a like not even a human being, and this is as a straight dude, so I can imagine if it's someone that they have like see value in, that's a like a young lady or like an attractive woman, like how they would treat them. Like I can kind of see, like, if you treat me like a piece of shit and you don't want anything from me, imagine how you look at like someone who's of lower status, and I'm saying it in quotes, like that is a comedian, that is also a woman, that is also that you find attractive. Like like the math in that, like you probably just will use them for whatever it is you want to use them for. And I
that's
I
some
see
of it.
that now in my community. So like me going the nerd route with comic book conventions and things like that. And back when the world was new and there were events,
It was
I
fresh,
could apply
right?
to be guest at.
go
you know what I mean?
inside. You can sneeze on someone and now
It was
spray you with-
crazy. It was wild
You're-
stuff. Go to Comic-Con, 100,000 people in the Javits Center. Just
Oh, I just got a
bumping into
palpitation.
each
Holy
other.
shit.
I missed my chance last year. I'm so stupid.
You wilded out. That was probably the last
Yeah.
one in years.
That-
But
That's where we first
Fuck.
met.
right, exactly. That is where we first met. But it was
Memories.
because like applying to smaller cons that I knew I had the criteria to be a part of. And then looking the way I look, and then the type of content that I put out, which is purely my opinions and things like that. The first question would always be, are you a cosplayer? Because I'm a woman, right? So how can we market you as a woman? I find you attractive. You want to just talk and wear a t-shirt? That's crazy. We need to find a way to like sexualize you in some way, or we don't think our core audience will be interested in what you have to say. Now, of course, the cons that I apply to don't exclusively say that, right? They're not going to articulate that, especially on wax, as in like an email on the phone where I could quote them. But in so many words, that's what they were saying, where like, if you're attractive, if you are a woman, we only have this avenue for there. And the panels that I were accepted on was because I either had a cosplayer with me or because I had a man on the panel. And it's just very interesting because, especially in that field, whenever I interact with men, or even when I do a live, when it's the comments and stuff that come up are your lips are so beautiful, blah blah blah, and it always reverts back to the way that I look instead of what I could talk about, except for when I'm discussing. And it's such a big part of who my brand and things like that, where it's like I'm hypersexualized, even though there's nothing I do that's sexual. You know what I mean? There's nothing I wear.
Yeah.
We were talking about that. I was like, yo, actually last time we saw each other, I was like, yo, I'm gonna show my navel and some wild shit. I remember.
I do remember that.
I'm gonna show my collarbone. It's like, whoa,
like,
Some
wow.
angel.
Shut down, Frankie.
You know, OnlyFans, and it's just my shoulders out. You know?
But that's crazy. So like, for you, you're someone that I feel like, you know, you obviously don't brand yourself as anything like a thirst or anything like that. But do you feel like you've been able to call people out on those things that make you uncomfortable? Or one of my takeaways from this documentary is, you know, obviously it's a different field, but especially in the sort of hip hop executive and music business field, as a woman, there's so much that you have to sort of like take on the chin. There were accounts of women basically saying, or even Drew herself when she was with L.A. Reid, this idea that like, okay, I'm gonna have to play along a little bit. I'm gonna have to make them believe that they have a chance. Do you feel like you are applying a similar strategy, insofar as like you're not saying what you really want to say in these situations, right?
Absolutely. Where like if someone does say something sexist or wrong on my page, it's like I can't attack in the way that's like in my head, which is normally like fuck no or something like that.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I have to be diplomatic because immediately you'll be taxed as either the angry black woman or a bitch or something like that, and then it just lowers your chances. So then what a lot of men tend to do in the entertainment industry is what I like to call that shit you can't prove, right? Which is probably what you guys have experienced with people who are white, where they do something that's sus, you know it's wrong, right? But when you're describing it, it sounds harmless. Okay,
So-
but you know the intent and stuff like that. So like even
Yeah.
at work, I remember there used to be this guy and he would say hello to me dirty as fuck. Okay. But it was hello. So like if I went to HR and described it like, yeah, he's saying hello to me dirty, they're gonna be like, so he can't greet you, right? Would it be the first question? But I'm like, no, y'all not hearing me. It's a dirty ass hello that means something else, right? Or even like which comes with the history, right? If I'm walking to work, 10 men have said hello to me in that same dirty way. Strangers that mean that I don't know how to react to, because if I ignore them, they may follow me. If I say hello back, they may follow me. If I ignore them, they may attack me. So all those things are things that we're processing. And I'm only speaking as a woman in New York on my commute. And then I go to work or I interact with other men. And then those things which are harmless, because that's what the men on the street who are catcalling are saying too, are things that you have to process as well. And it's just really weird and difficult to kind of like separate all of those things and really see the nuances in it.
Yeah, it's like that plausible deniability. I think about my students. If like say like I got a student who's been talking as I'm giving a lecture or something like that, and then when they stop, I'll say thank you, and then I'll get that you're welcome. I'm like you're being a little dick. I'm like, what? I said you're welcome. It's like no, you know what you did.
Meet me in the parking lot.
Right.
Put him in the parking lot.
Meet me in the parking lot
In
after
the
class.
dungeon.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
So
What was that
one of
shit you said in math 301?
Have you ever approached a student after he graduated like, you little shit?
I don't think they're old enough yet. I'm just counting the days. I think
Okay.
I think next May, next May my schedule is going to be completely full. No. So one of the things that was really striking to me, there were a lot of different takeaways from this. Some of the things that came up was, of course, the fact one great line was that who we decide to listen to, who we decide to believe, is a reflection and entirely predicated on who we value in America. And the documentary sort of opens up with this idea that the people that have come out in the Me Too movement and that big wave of Me Too movements, they were all high status white beautiful women, essentially. And those stories are being heard. And even in this instance, the main victims that are being focused on, you have like those main three, and then there are a bunch of people who are contributing, who are indirectly involved, and certainly victims in their own right. But those main three, they are all light skinned, so they're experiencing that light skin privilege, something that I know all too well. That was something that was really interesting. The documentary also gave me a sense of like that the idea of the horror of coming forward and why people don't come forward, and that contextualized in this is where the sort of how this ties into the Black Lives Matter movement is. There's a lot of Black cultural issues within the Black community and also within the context of within America that makes things more complicated. The idea that if you are taking down your accuser, especially someone of the degree of influence and power that Russell Simmons has, you're essentially weaponizing the criminal justice system against your own Black people, which is obviously like a betrayal given the historical context of how the criminal justice system has been used against Black people. So there's just so many things that are at play here. And then what really clicks for me, and I guess what I want to get into here, is what makes these stories so believable. Because for the most part, you know, I would say 99%, I put myself in that camp of believe women. Of course, there's like that tiny little asterisks because there are cases of people who lie. And I even feel uncomfortable like even admitting to that because I don't know what is the comfortable degree to which you can acknowledge that part. But when I think of that part, I think of like Tara Reid in relation to Joe Biden. I think there were lots of I admitted on last week's show, and I should have named that I don't feel good about this, but I had that sort of egoic, like when I heard about it, I didn't want it to be true because of the implications for like the government, our nation, the world, getting Trump out of office. But then as I also looked into it, like, and tried to be more objective, I was like, this woman is not credible. And the fact that like the Republicans haven't been, screaming on the top of a mountaintop, like, trying to be like, Tara Reid, they're not giving this the Benghazi treatment like they did with Hillary. The fact that they're not doing that means that she's not credible. So saying that to say, there are people who we don't believe, or I don't believe.
Right.
But what makes these women's stories so believable, or one of the things that makes it so believable, is number one, the contextualization, like you say, of the people and what they did. So getting that Drew's story of her dynamic within this industry really helped to understand the situation. But one thing that I mentioned last week, because we were watching Betty, which there was a what do you call it? There was someone who had allegations against them. And the thing that sort of made it click for someone that was close to that person was like, oh, they had this tendency. They did this. They have like a kink. Like if you look Michael Jackson, it was like the nipples or shit like that. Louis C.K., it's like masturbating in front of people. And for Russell Simmons, like hearing that like, oh, he was like naked and he had a condom on. Shit like that. And when you hear those patterns, those are the things that I'm like, okay, this guy definitely did this. And the fact that there were 20 plus accusers, it's like, okay, even if 17 of these people are lying, that means that this man is still kind of a monster. I definitely believe the women in this documentary. But what was it about for you guys that made their stories so believable? Frankey, I mean, from the women's perspective, how do you feel about what made their stories so believable? And what do you think about what I was saying with regard to when to not believe? Right. I don't even know how to say that.
Right. And you know what? I think we all kind of experienced that bias at one point. I've definitely felt that, particularly like when you said the Michael Jackson thing. I remember watching this and I was like, this is crazy. These three guys like benefited off of it and stuff. And there were just biases that kind of come through because like I said, it's nuanced and there's a history there that comes with it, right? In the terms of Michael Jackson and Russell Simmons in this case too, right? These are icons that shaped who we are as people and have propelled the Black community in such a way. So then to hear their legacy getting tainted is like, makes it difficult to process and to believe, right?
It's like tainting Black culture as a whole.
It's like hearing Santa is raping people when he puts the gifts underneath the tree. And I know that's terrible, but that's what it feels like. It's like this is a pinnacle of what, for me, I remember seeing a concert with Michael Jackson on TV, not like in person. I'm not that old. But I was watching it, and the man gets on stage 10 minutes. He didn't say a word because people were screaming at the top of their lungs. Girls were crying. That's the level he was. You know what I mean? I remember hearing Thriller and being like, this is the craziest, most beautiful thing I've ever heard in my life. And then to like see three little boys that worked with him, that got rich off of him. One, I think, ended up like dating Britney Spears and has a prosperous career. You know, for me, it was hard. I was like, okay, so yeah, just trying to take down the only black man we have that kind of got us into music. And then even, I think it was Rosenberg who checked Ebro on the Hot 97, like, yo, why are we, everyone else we cancel at the drop of a hat. But
Yeah.
because it's Russell Simmons, we're all like, let's have a dialogue and learn.
Yeah,
And
that was a
things like
great
that.
moment. That was a great
Yeah.
moment from him.
Me
I'm so
too.
glad he called him out on that.
Yeah.
Immediately. And you know what? I think it was Drew Dixon checked Angela, and this is before I saw the documentary that I was listening to it. She checked Angela Yee on that because she refused to go on the call with Charlemagne and Ebro, right? Not Ebro, Envy, rightfully so, because they called not her and the victims, they called Russell Simmons to be on the show and was giving them Charlemagne the God. Charlemagne the God, who's had death threats because he asked the hard questions, is asking him softball questions. Yeah, I heard, Oprah is backing out and da 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 da. And I was like, of course she is. Of course she is, because think of, and they paint that picture. Think of the influence Russell Simmons has.
Yeah.
And I spoke to my cousin about it, and she was talking to me about how Kimora Lee Simmons had a reality show back in the day. And of course, she would go and visit Russell Simmons while he was at work because he's the father of her children. And she was like, even when he was dating her, it felt predatory because she's older than me. It felt weird. And when they got married and stuff like that. But then on the show, now Russell's like 50, he's older. He was dating this like 19-year-old girl. And it was weird. And she was like, she was watching it and it was weird and it was widely accepted. And they were just playing it off as being whimsical and like this like weird dynamic. But she was like, it was predatory. And she was like, so then when I heard the allegations, it all clicked. It, to your point, Danny, that like you see things and you're like, damn. Even with R. Kelly, when I saw that, I was like, he dead was putting it in his music and nobody was listening. He dead said age ain't nothing but a number. He dead wrote that. Had his girl sing it. Had the girl he was raping Aaliyah sing it. And then there's just a complacency. And even like hearing like Dame Dash speak about it and him talking about like being best friends with Jay-Z and Jay-Z he was engaged to Aaliyah. So that's you, Danny, having Winston do break bread with your girlfriend's rapist. You know what I mean? And you're like, what?
Yeah, that's some weird shit.
Weird. And then destroyed his Def Jam and all that. He destroyed that after Jay-Z did. And I'm like, that's the repercussions you have to face when you're that. And I'm glad that they spoke on, we know that we're light-skinned women. And I always feel weird because I never feel like I'm that light-skinned. I feel like I'm on the cusp, and I feel like my hair and my Latina features push me over the edge to being light-skinned, but whatever.
Yeah, and if anytime you feel a little bit of like doubt in that regard, just look at my picture and you'll feel better about yourself.
Right, and then I'm like, I'm definitely on the browner side.
For our listeners who don't know, go ahead.
Yeah,
sorry.
but I hear both. So I'll have like people be like, you're light-skinned, Frankie, and I'm like, am I? And then I'll have like other people be like, you're not. And I'm like, okay, but there's a question there that I need to address. But I love that they address it too, that like we know as lighter, beautiful, or like the standard of beautiful women that we're going to have validity and we need to bring women up using that power. And I thought that was dope.
Yeah, you had something you wanted to say?
No, I was just going to say for our listeners who might not know what light skin privilege is, it's just like because it was very interesting that was actually, because I was like, oh, there's no like dark skinned women in this like series or darker hued women in the series, but they talked about it and it seemed like For whatever reason, Russell had like a type. He was like the skinny. He's like thin,
Yeah,
skinny
yeah.
bitches or something. Was the what was like what they were referred to. So yeah, that was an interesting point because there are I mean all Houston women who were probably accosted and sexually assaulted by this man, but they didn't come forward, or maybe they
Well, they did have those all those contributors who
yeah,
were
they had the
not like
contributors, but like
yeah.
I just thought that was like a really dope of the documentary team to like highlight that because it was
Mhm.
a definite what's the word I'm looking pattern, you know what I mean? And I was
Right.
like that because that's one thing I always notice when I watch something like where's the dark skinned people, you know? And it's just like yeah, that was interesting point that they said they had light skin privilege, and that is a thing, you know.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
if it's even a thing amongst black people, it's always when white people say, "Oh, there's no such thing as white," like you know, white privilege. Like, dude, there's light skin privilege, like
Right.
amongst
I get it.
our own.
The
Yeah,
fact
You
that
know?
a
brown
police
paper
might
bag
see me
tests.
and be like, "Oh, that dude is Puerto Rican,"
Yeah, yeah.
might get me out of trouble sometimes. Who knows? Like, but Yemi, what was it about this documentary that made their stories, these women's stories, so believable for you?
I for me, I think I have a theory about power, and I think power just corrupts and pollutes the mind, especially if you're a man. And there's something to be said when you're so powerful, like someone like Russell Simmons or Bill Cosby, or like, because these are powerful men. Say what you want about them, they're pieces of shit, but these are powerful people in their industry that can make or break your life if you're, you know, a young up and comer, right? And I always think I have a theory that like I think if you're a powerful man, even today, that there's this fraternity of like dudes where because if say I'm a comedian or Danny's like an improver and like we go up together and like whatever like UCB and he has a pattern of like whatever like sexually assaulting someone and we're a group and we're like the most powerful like improv group. I'm just using improv because improv is like not like the most powerful thing
Yet, yet,
Yeah.
no,
not
no,
until
no,
I get
no
on
shade.
Wild and Out,
No,
Yemi.
I'm just saying, like, no shade to improv, but I'm just using that as an allegory. And like, I think these men, everyone knew that this dude was like, like, you know, was bad. You know, like Chris D'Elia, he was in the news because there was no like proof, but where there's smoke, there's fire. Like, dude, is you know, he's talking to teens. Like, come on, like this guy's like he's a predator. You know, he's a statutory rapist because there's so many patterns of it. But that's not the point. The point is like what happens like if I'm a guy who's friends with a super powerful man that has this affliction and this fucking sickness disease. I guess to answer your question is like, yeah, I believe it because this is like a theory on power that I have, and also a pattern of power that I have. Powerful men who are just taken by their sexual predatory behaviors and habits, and I'm just like, what is it
Trump.
like? What yeah, you name it, like, and it's not just like American men. This is like around the world. So I'm just like, is there something about being a male and having power that is evil? Because it's starting to seem like that is the pattern or evil, whatever acronym you want to use
Well,
for
I
it.
think
Or
at the core, a lot of at the core, I think some people are more conscious. Russell Simmons even says like he wanted to do it, like he just like wanted Naomi Campbell to be his only problem. He was very open about it. He's like he was in it to like he just wants to get the most beautiful women, and that's kind of it. And I think there are some people who will get into whatever they're doing because they want to get the women, but also that on the conscious level, but also on the subconscious, like sort of this is how we're wired to be as successful as we can, to have access to people who will provide us the highest the most fit progeny or kids basically.
to counter
So
that, I don't think we're wired like that. I just to counter that, I don't think
I think a
we
lot
are
of
not.
people are. I don't think everyone is.
I think we are led to believe to think like that because that is how like what happiness is defined by corporate America.
Yeah,
To
and
be
so but they
to
think that they're gonna
hoard,
get that.
to have everything and to like shell out and have this trickle down economics, which is fucking bullshit. So I think that's because if you look into a lot of West African, a lot of South American like countries, it's communal. Like these poor countries, if you ever visit them, they're so fucking happy, bro. It's so weird and it messes with your mentality. You're like, these people have nothing and they give everything.
Right.
So I think that's a very Western Hemisphere type of like way of
Yes.
thinking. Like
Absolutely
a very
right. You're absolutely right. I should say that. I should say
If
that.
you go to West Africa, if you go to Nigeria, if you go to Lagos, like people are like, hey, my brother, how's it going? You want some like it's communal, and that's how we. That's I mean, that's who we are as like a species. We're a communal species. But you know, if you go into the Western Hemisphere and all of that, like it totally changes.
Yeah. That's a good qualifier there, because when I say we're wired, I guess I am thinking more so about the social conditioning with regard to like the social conditioning that a lot of Western people
have
are.
Your house, you better have everything, because you know, like this is you gotta have money, right? If you don't have money,
people, but people who are wired like that, like a Russell Simmons, or these people in power, I think they have that sense of entitlement. It's like, I have done this, therefore I can do whatever the fuck I want without consequence. And then there are also people, whether it's their friends or people who are trying to use them, will enable them. We saw, you see it on a number of different levels, like college athletes. I think a lot of like Aaron Hernandez, if you see that documentary, I think a lot of the things that he did and the mentality that he ended up assuming that led him to think he could murder people and get away with it was the people enabling him. So
I mean, look at OJ. Like he was like he's like the prime example of someone who got away with murder. He was like America's sweetheart, superstar football guy. Everyone loved OJ, and then he like they made it all racial, and it was like, but we all know like he did it. And for black people, we celebrate it because like, see how it feels when like a black man gets off for this. It was more different.
Yeah.
And you see that now still. So when you watch these police brutality videos that are still going on to like today, there'll probably be a new video.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? And it's like, it's when you can get away with someone, it's a rush and it's a high. And I've done it too. Something minuscule, right? I'll walk into a club and be like, I'm bad. I could skip this line. It's not right, but I'm gonna do it because I can. And it's like, it's on that level. So like, even when you see people move in that way, it's because they know there's no real consequences. And that's why, to your point, Yemi, and yours too, Dan, you both are kind of pushing that same point of, it's society molding you to let you know, one, these are your goals, this is what you should reach for, and two, letting you, people around you being complicit and letting you continue to do that, because that also gives them privileges that they typically wouldn't be able to get.
Exactly.
So like, in a cop situation, I could kneel on someone for 9 minutes and still have people defend why it was right or why it wasn't quite wrong and may not get off. I personally do not think any of these cops are really going to get off. Okay. That's how much power they have, and they know it. And that's why they're slapping us up. They're wilding out. I went to a protest in Brooklyn, and it's a peaceful protest, right? You have not yet seen someone pull out a gun at any of these protests that are black, right? Only the KKK protests and the white
the dudes
protests.
who wanted to open up Kmart a couple months ago, they're like, I want to shop, Carol.
Still guns, but we got flowers and water and signs
and snacks,
and music, and they're like, send the cops out with full riot gear. You know what I mean? That's what I'm saying, where it's like, it's just a power dynamic that I think at some point they get off. That's part of the experience. For Russell, to me, I think it was part of his experience.
Absolutely.
And like you guys were saying, he had the same pattern when he'll walk out with a condom on.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
That was that kind of like, after the second or third time, I was like, what? That is like, so he had a routine. He always had he had like a bait
but a lot
and
of these
switch.
people,
Like,
they
come
have
listen.
they have routines, or whatever
because
you want
they're
to call
sick.
it.
It's part of their thing. I know this is gross, you guys. I'm sorry I'm going to say this, but I'm sure you guys all experienced this. When you masturbate, there's ceremony there, right? Like when you do that, it's not
I
like
masturbate in the closet, and like it's a whole thing for me.
It's a closet, but it's a thing. There's all the ceremony there.
Why did you say?
I'm ashamed.
Up for that one.
I walk. Yeah, you kind of set me up.
But there's
no, but yeah, you're right. Yeah. It is. You do feel like a little like, all right.
Even when you have sex consensually, right? The whole point of getting off, right? You find what works for you, and then there's a ceremony that's part of that. And I see it a lot. And I was talking to a guy about this recently, about how like, I think I told him most women have been sexually assaulted in some way, and we don't even bat an eye because it's part of it. It's part of it, especially if we went to college. If you went to college, 100%. there was something weird that went on. Either you were on a date with a guy and he pressured you into having sex, and that was something. He takes a condom off. We were talking about I May Destroy You. He takes a condom off and then kind of makes
that's
you
sexual,
do it. You know, there are just things that are just so baked into our culture, and that men know they can get away with, and but push it off as being, yeah, I mean, you mentioned it, young and full of cum, right? Where it's
Young,
like,
dumb, and full of cum. Oh, I was a sad funny. I was an idiot. I couldn't think without, like, I gotta go. Friday, Saturday night, if I didn't go out, I would get angry because I felt like I was missing, like, I was a bad human. It was a total different
But if
complex.
I'm being honest, we do too.
Yeah.
We want to fuck just as much.
All right.
But
but it has to be in context.
Crusty. Y'all be crusty, and that's the thing.
Yeah,
You know what I'm saying? So then
I
it's
wasn't
like
crusty. I was
pushed
very
into
fresh.
Situations. You said you was fresh. You be put in situations.
I got my white tee on. Hold on now.
Let me see the hat, yo. Let me see.
It's Marvin the Martian.
Maybe.
You saying you might be a food nigga, Yemi?
Oh,
Bring it back.
I have been a
Bring
food
it back.
before. All right.
That's
I
what
just didn't know that's what I was called. Thank you, Frankey, for putting me on the game.
That's what I'm saying. So we're young, dumb, and full of, I don't know. We have some discharge that come out when we're having a good time. But either
Not a
way,
health class, Frankey.
society doesn't push that, right? I remember I watched this show called Pen 15, and they had an episode about a girl coming of age and masturbating, and I was thrown back. It's hilarious, but I was watching it. I was like, I've never seen this before, but this is definitely an experience, and the experience that we don't get as women to push forward. So like as a 13-year-old woman, girl, if I start to feel those urges, masturbating is not something that's encouraged or talked about within young girls. We're not doing that, and if you do, you're deprived, you're gross, even now, even if you're not religious. Yeah. And even Big Mouth, we talked about that show too. It's just things that we don't really get to explore where men do. And then it's just a weird vortex that we end up being in.
Yeah. What do you, just to shift the conversation a little bit, what do you think should happen to guys like Russell Simmons or the LA Reids of the world, who to this point are, free?
They're still walking free, right? They're not
walking amongst us,
rich.
Yeah, with money. Rich. And one of the things I'll say before I let Frankey respond is, in preparation for this episode, I was watching Russell Simmons on the Breakfast Club interview with his, doing his whole yogi thing where he's got his legs crossed and he's in this really show space. And I felt nauseous watching it, because I'm like, this dude is just putting on a show, just showing off. And I just was like, yo, this guy is full of shit. Either that or he's a psychopath. But yeah, feel free.
He probably is a psychopath, because he would, if you noticed, after he did what he did, it's like nothing happened. Like each story was some type of what's it called? Green lighting? Gaslighting. Where he's like, we're gonna just do
But you gonna continue. He said now that we're fucking the Drew.
Now that this is wait, what? Like as if it was it's. I don't know. I'm not a psychologist.
It's like mental gymnastics that your brain has to do to not cope with the implications of your actions.
That's sociopathic behavior.
For people who know, for my anime heads, for Attack on Titan, think about Erwin Taicho. Right. Straight up Erwin shit. It's like where he's like, wait, what happened? Why are they dying? It's like you have there's a certain level of disassociation. Yeah, there's a compartmentalization.
What he was doing was like
monstrous.
He had to be a monster to beat monsters. He could not be a human to beat those monsters. We got to do an Attack on, not to shift, but we got. Sorry,
we got to do that episode.
Yeah.
But yeah, saying that to say,
little nerd.
But saying that to say that's I think that somewhat explains away the level of delusion that makes you, after raping someone, be like, hey, we're fucking now, or to deny it as flatly as it is, despite the overwhelmingly strong evidence. And he would force people. All right, so without giving too much information, I know someone who knows Russell Simmons, basically. There's an adjacency there. And when all the allegations came out, and he was calling up his friend to be like, yo, can you believe what they're saying? Can you believe what they're saying? And when that person didn't immediately like come out in his defense and support, he was like, he kind of like got this like forceful tone, like, what, you don't believe me, you don't believe me, you're just like everybody else, like that sort of militant gaslighting slash like trying to pit you as like an enemy. That's that type of shit that happens. And dude was like, listen, like, you coming at me all this aggressively doesn't exactly help your cause here.
Right.
But I guess like this, as we start to transition towards the latter portion of this episode and wrap things up, what are the implications? What do we do with Russell Simmons now? What should happen with him? How should people view his legacy? Should people look to him for any sort of inspiration, whether it's like in his books or anything like that? What are the implications for how we look at Russell Simmons?
Yeah, that's the hard part, right? Like, that his work is still his work. Undeniable. His work is still something.
Put in that work, yeah.
Yeah, it's something to applaud. It's something to appreciate. It's definitely changed who we are as Black people, how we navigate the music industry. But at the same time, he needs to go to jail, right?
Yeah, he's still a predator. Yeah.
He's still a predator, and he's right.
No charges at the time.
None.
But,
and you know what? And I spoke to someone because they're like, yeah, Black people typically, it's easier for us to actually be held accountable. And I agree with that statement as well. I think Russell Simmons should be held accountable. And I also think that we shouldn't lose sight that people like Harvey Weinstein, things like that, who have also shaped our life in other ways, should be held accountable as well. All of them should. And I don't think that it's right that Black people get held. And that's an argument and why some people are protecting Russell, because they're like, every time it's one of us, we're swift with justice. And then when it's a white guy or something, it's like, so, you know, Jeffrey Epstein was having allegations like 10, 12 years ago and nothing happened. And I agree that that's tragic and we need to do it with both. But with him in particular, I think that, you know, there needs to be a reckoning for him, because he's two things at the same time, and it's hard to separate the two. And, you know, some people may be mature enough to do that. I personally, I don't know if I am.
Yeah. What would you say about someone who, like, his work is his work, right? Can someone be like, okay, you're a horrible monster, you deserve to be in jail, but I might read your book to gain inspiration for entrepreneurship or something like that?
You know what's the hard part there with his work being his work is that you supporting his work, no matter how amazing it is supporting him and funding him so that he can continue that lifestyle. And I think that's where the cancel culture and where the nuance starts to leave, right? Because you're like, I love his work, but if I support it in any way, he's going to continue to keep that power dynamic. So then on the other end, I think real justice would be, yeah, all his work is now only going to his artists.
Yeah.
But who weren't a part of that.
I have a two-part question, or just like for the room. So can we not listen to any Def Jam hits? One, and two, as a person, as a male, as a straight cis Black male, how do I respond to a person that's maybe more powerful than me that is exhibiting that pattern and that behavior? How do men help is what I'm asking, because it's like, I've been in those situations and I'm just like, it's not me, it's not my girlfriend, I'm not gonna get involved, or like, I don't know that person, or I don't know that woman. Like, how do men, which I'm sure a lot of men want to know, at least I'll speak from I really would like to know, like, how should we respond when we see this problematic behavior from a powerful person, whether it's their job or like in their community, in their family, because it also happens in it's prominent in Black families, predatory behavior. Like, how do we respond to that? I'm sorry, that was a lot to digest. One, can we listen to the music? Two, like, how do we as men like counter this this immoral like power dynamic when we encounter it and see it?
Yeah, that's where the nuance comes. How can you not listen to anything from Def Jam, and now all the artists are gonna suffer because of the actions of one man? And that's what I meant. Like, you know, it shouldn't be that he's getting his money coming from that stream should be cut off, so that the artists don't suffer, like the Fugees, like Lauryn Hill, things like that.
Yeah. I was thinking for like Michael Jackson, I'm like, I don't want to listen to his music, but that fucks up Quincy Jones. Quincy Jones didn't do anything, you know?
Right.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. Like, do we just like R. Kelly? I wasn't really rocking with R. Kelly like that, but like, whatever. Like Harvey Weinstein, can I not watch his movie? Like, where's the cutoff? Like, it's like,
And I don't know.
yeah,
I don't
like,
know that, to be
it's so
honest.
weird.
And then for men's response, I think believing and pushing is definitely a help, and not getting defensive too, even when you're being called out. So I noticed this a lot, in particular with black men in the nerd community, because that's the entertainment industry that I'm tied to. So that's where I pull my reference from. But sometimes we have this big thing called gatekeeping, where I say something and it's invalid because I'm a woman. And even my friends, people that I associate with, sometimes implement that without them being knowingly doing it. And when I check them on it, immediately they get defensive. How could you say that about me? You know me, we're friends, da da. And I think that's a big portion, one, with black men recognizing that there is a power dynamic, and that no matter what, if we're both poor, if we make the same amount of money, you still have more power than I do as a black woman. And understanding that yes, we're together in race, but then there's a patriarchy that you are complicit in, and you need to be aware. So when I call you out on it and let you know how I feel about it, you getting defensive, one, makes me second guess if I should speak on it, and then two, it invalidates it. But then another thing, Yemi, is there's what so much regular men can do. It's the powerful men who need to be shut down. So it's like you can beat Dave Chappelle. I don't want to use his name, but I'm gonna make up. You can meet this powerful comedian, Louis C.K. You can meet Louis C.K., see him do some wild shit, say something, and now your career is done.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, yep.
So what has that done? It needs to be people like Louis. It needs to be his peers that check him.
I think that's a great point, because looking at Russell Simmons, like there's a lot of people who have been friends with him for the longest period of time, and they're afraid to say anything because
they'll lose that money, they'll lose that bread. It's like, I gotta eat.
I gotta eat. I have my family. This is the only career I know.
Yeah.
Drew had an exception, and she had a huge privilege that a lot of people won't, and would have to have continued on that journey, because she was rich, right? She came from a upper middle class, maybe high class household. She had an education from Stanford, so that probably, and already had a huge dossier of things. So then when she decided to go ghost, what did she do? She went to Harvard Business School. A lot of women don't have that privilege. You know what I mean? To just leave, drop everything, and be like, I'm going to start something else. A lot of women, that would have been the end. If they ghosted, then there's no other career that they poured 10 years into.
You're waiting tables. Like
you're waiting tables. You know what I mean? Making an eighth of what you were making before. And she had to have been rich by then, right? So she had Grammys, platinum records, things like that. She had to have been a very well-off woman by that time, regardless of her status prior.
Yeah, and she's established well enough. Even coming out of this documentary, she had the privilege, because she had set up such a good foundation, that she was able to leave her husband, basically, and kind of.
She said she had to get back to. I kind of understand that.
I understand where she's coming from. Yeah, absolutely.
It's like,
but she had the privilege to be able to do that.
Yeah.
That came from the foundations, everything that you mentioned previously there, Frankie.
Or even her connection to the New York Times, right? Her friend, because she was already connected, her friend set up that network for her, right? Versus if that were me, Frankie, right now, and I walked into the New York Times, they'd be like, who the fuck are you? Get out of here.
Yeah, so I guess we're leaning towards the end of the conversation. Any final thoughts anyone has on the documentary, or just in general on ways that we can just, I guess, improve as people and try to make the world better? Because right now, including this, there's a lot of things happening around the world, and people just need to become better, and we need to pay attention, and we need to step up to the plate. But yeah, if y'all have any final thoughts on what you want to say before we close out the podcast.
Yeah, and hooray for me. I'm going to start by saying I feel better for what that's worth, but in the sense that I feel like I have improved in terms of my degree of understanding, my degree of respect for exactly what the dynamic and experience is of victims, and particularly as it pertains to Black victims of sexual harassment. So my hope is, and really why I wanted to do this episode, is for our fans to see the reflection that we're going through, and to know that you should be going through a similar process. It's okay to ask yourself and wrestle with these hard issues, and it's okay, and I feel good coming out of this with so many questions unanswered at this point. Although that's somewhat uncomfortable, I'm overall really happy that I've had someone that I trust in Frankey, again, best person in all of the multiverse, to help us get through this process. But I do feel good that I have a new level of understanding.
All right.
And just put this man behind bars. Let me just name that. Fucking put Russell Simmons in jail. The fact that there are no charges is insane to me. Insane.
Yeah, I agree. What about you, Yemi? You have anything you want to say?
I learned a lot. I mean, I don't know, there's a lot to digest, and I'm gonna speak from the eye and be the change I want to see in the world, and just try to. I don't know. I have to unlearn a lot. I'm gonna be honest. I have to unlearn a lot that I was like taught through hip hop, through being a West African, Nigerian American. There's a lot of like misogyny just kind of baked into like, and it's hard to be like, I'm just gonna be good now. Like, that's not how brains work. That's not how people work. But like watching and like understanding and listening how to be an active listener and an ally to women, I think is something that I'm learning how to do while simultaneously just trying to live in this pandemic like kind of world. And I thanks Frankey for being on, and I learned a lot today, and we do have to have these uncomfortable maybe debates or arguments just to kind of talk about it and normalize that this happens to women, and that we can't be defensive. Just the way we're acting like our white brothers and sisters, like you can't be defensive if someone brings up racism. You can't. It's not gonna work. Like we just have to have these conversations. Like fine, like it's okay if you like get angry or if you feel ashamed. Those are good emotions. Cry about it, like well, kumbaya. But we have to have these conversations. And with Black women in particular, we do have to have these conversations amongst ourselves and others for it to come to the forefront and see some type of change.
Yes, Frankey, you have anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, I think that it's dope that y'all took the time to learn and be open and non-defensive. And like, yeah, that's so powerful to acknowledge that like there are just so things that even the best of men have biases that it's difficult to kind of break, and to understand that it's a journey. So I think that's dope that you guys had that and had the wherewithal to be like, let's get a Black woman on here so that we don't get tore the fuck up.
Yes. Black children.
So I really appreciate that.
Also, it was just like it's been so long since we've collaborated, so it's just good it's been too long.
Right, but definitely call me on that Attack on Titan episode. Don't play me.
We got you.
Give me on some good shit.
Get an episode.
Yeah. But yeah, I definitely think it makes me hopeful to see that there are men out there really using their platform and being open to hear a different perspective, and know that comes with things that will make you all reflect and be like, damn, I shouldn't have done that, or man, I've been complicit in this. So I think that's very brave, and I commend you guys on that.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to Binge Society. Frankey, where can our listeners once again find you on all your social media?
Yes. D-Ben, yeah. Roll up to Fantastic Frankey on Instagram. So Fantastic is spelled regular. Frankey is Frankey. If you're feeling frisky, you can follow me on Twitter at FanboyFighter. I get on there on occasion, light people up. Right now, I've been on a Hamilton tip because I watch that daily. I'm about to turn it on when I'm done. So yeah, I'll be going. I just love that Lin-Manuel can't really sing, and I love that. He's like, excuse me, I wrote this play, so I'm gonna be Hamilton. And then he wrote the play in a way.
And he was like, I'm also gonna get all the women.
Yes,
right.
All of them.
Yeah.
And he wrote it in a way that you don't have to have the best of voice. Like he doesn't have to have that big of a range. I
gotta be able to like spit, have some flow,
Exactly.
And harmonize.
Yeah.
And harmonize. That's it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's where you guys can find me for sure.
Awesome.
Yes, you can be part of 20,000 plus strong.
Yeah.
That's right. She's
Yeah,
growing every
growing,
single day.
man.
And
Check
then
out
also,
the content.
I'm gonna forget about y'all for sure. You know how people say don't forget.
The other part, she's like, excuse me?
I'm like, who are y'all? Oh my god. I was
Happening.
on your show for sure. It was me.
I don't think so.
That was my doppelganger guy. Sorry.
Different. Yeah, different Frankie.
All right, so this was a really good conversation. Of course, Binge Society. You can find us
Follow,
on
share.
Instagram. Oh yes, of course. Follow, share on
Write a
Rate
review.
us on iTunes.
Write a review. As always, thank you very much. Instagram, Binge Society. Twitter at Binge Society Pod. TikTok at Binge Society Pod. Write us an email at bingesocietypodcast@gmail.com. My name is Winston Brewington, aka Radio Win. You can find me on Instagram at Radio Win.
My name is Danny Bronner, aka Danny Bronner on Instagram. And also Laces Out Dan 485 on Twitter. Yes, that is an Ace Ventura reference.
Where can people find your PS4 tag?
I don't give that information out.
This is in-house fighting. Yeah, you can find me at Yemi Comedy. You know what time it is. Yemi Comedy Instagram. Follow me. I got shows coming up. We got some shows in Bushwick coming up. So follow me if you want to, hang with the gang.
That's right. Live comedy outdoors.
Outdoors, socially distant, safe.
That's crazy. I don't see that invite.
Oh my
God. Wow, that's wild. Yemi don't never invite nobody nowhere. That's crazy. I got a bike now, Yemi. I can get there.
I'm gonna send you the invite right now, as a matter of fact, because let's not record this for the.
Right.
I don't want everybody to know.
Leave that in there. Who's on here today? Not Trevor. But whoever is on. Leave that.
Trevor's on. It's not Trevor. The mic. Who's on? I don't know.
All right, guys. Thanks again for listening. We will see y'all next week. Be safe. Wear your mask. Wash your hands. Hand sanitizer. Peace.
Peace out. Stay black.
Yo.